Hey everybody, Pepper here, and today we're going to be talking with author Toni Shiloh about her new book, The Love Script. Come join us. Hey everybody, Pepper here, and I am so excited to get to have Toni Shiloh with me today. She is going to be sharing about her newly released book, The Love Script. And The Love Script has the same birthday as Positively Penelope. So I was so honored to get to share that birthday with her of our two romantic books with comedy in them, which is always fun to write, right?
Oh, definitely.
Um, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the book, uh, some of her inspiration for the story, and some of the pretty interesting and deep concepts that she brought out, the themes she brought out through the story that I think are great for us as believers, those of us who are believers, to talk about and think about as we share in community with each other, but also just great concepts to just talk about as people who live in the same planet together, right? so, um, so anyway, let's do a little bit of what is the love script about.
Sure. So this is a love script, and it's book one in the Love in the Spotlight series. And it's basically about a woman named Nevaeh Richards, who's a hairstylist. She's a Hollywood hairstylist, but also does some salon work and personal hair care work. And she's at an actor's home working on his mother's hair. And as she leaves, she almost trips. He saves her. Paparazzi snaps a photo, and now it looks like their relationship is more than it really is, and they decide to fake date to save his reputation. Cue drama.
In comes the tension.
Yeah, exactly. Bum,
So,
bum,
so the
bum.
process really is how playing out this fake dating aspect as Christians, but also there's a lot of other things going on in the story besides just your what your persona is as a Christian in an environment that's very different for most people who are Christians. So, a little bit about that. Your hero is such a sweet guy. He's a good guy, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about his struggles in this story with the dynamic of fake dating and also his spotlight life.
Oh, yes. So Lamont Booker is a Christian. He's the reformed bad boy. And so it's his goal to not be the person he used to be. He doesn't want to be his old self. So he kind of puts things in place like, reading his Bible, having some friends that are his accountability, which are great. You get to meet them in the story. But he's also really, I don't know if the word's cautious, but he's really aware that the public is watching him, either watching for him to mess up or watching him to prove that he is who he says he is, a Christian, a believer. Um, so with the fake dating, he's like, well, I don't want to lie. Um, and you'll get to see this more. They have a conversation basically about, is lying acceptable? Is it ever acceptable? The heroine, throws up some um, Bible stars by mentoring Rahab as
Mm-hmm.
well. Rahab did it. And I don't know, I had fun with the conversation, but I also wanted to, really examine the seriousness of it because I think a lot of times, we'll pull out those self-justifications of why it's not really hurting anyone to lie and why it's needed. So I don't want to say enjoyed that process, but I don't know. Sometimes you just need to wrestle with it, and I get to wrestle with imaginary characters in my head,
Kind of real conflict. Let's do it that
right?
way, right?
Exactly.
But I also think you're like me as a writer. We enjoy a challenge, even not just the challenge of putting characters on paper and trying to meet a deadline, but the challenge of writing stories that have conversations that are meaningful.
Right.
And and I think that's what makes those kinds of things so fun. And insightful and kind of soul searching for us is that we get to ask those kinds of questions in the safe spot of the fiction world where we can kind of wrestle them out before we send them out to the world.
Exactly.
um, so one of the things that I think you did so many things so well in the story, but you have a tendency to do this in most of your books, is creating characters that we connect with.
Mhm.
But also creating characters we not just connect with, but emotionally care for. And that happens really quick with Nevaeh because she's taking care of Miss Rosie. And you see that compassion and the humor she plays with Miss Rosie is the hero's
Mom.
mother, right?
Yeah.
And you get to see that tenderness and the her strength of character, but also her humor coming out. And I love that because you do that so quickly. And then you show the heroes, you show his emotional side because he's cautious. And I think cautious would be a safe word to say in the fact of how you deal with people outside your Hollywood world, being cautious because you don't know what they want from you,
Right.
especially with his job. Um, he's cautious with Nevaeh, but he's also kind. And that is a way that we emotionally connect to him and want to see good things happen in both of them. Right. And I love how you do that. You're so consistent at building that emotional connection with readers and the characters.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I love this bit of information, and I think the readers will like hearing about this too if they haven't already. You did some really cool research, but you have a certain family member who could help you with this Hollywood research. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yes, I picked my brother's brain. And the interesting fact of that is he lives in LA. He is an actor. He's hasn't had any major roles, but he's been in enough to where I was like, hey, tell me about LA, tell me about the movie life. Um, and I just wrote and wrote, and unless he said something that I need to, ask clarifying questions. But even then, like once I started writing after I did the research, I would just text them, hey, like is there an acronym for this? Like, what's this called? Like, I don't know this. And he would just respond. And so it was good. It was cool to be able to talk to him and ask him questions about the setting, about acting. Because usually when you're researching, you're asking a stranger, there's all sorts of awkwardness and you don't want to bug them. But when it's a family member, you're like, there are no rules. I can just bug them at will.
Incredibly convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
I started thinking after I heard that bit of information, I started thinking, okay, who in my family has a job that's interesting enough to research, right? So just so you can have that little more peace of mind to say, oh, that person's easy to call. I'll ask
Right, exactly. Just start making like a Rolodex, the old Rolodex, and put people's jobs next to it.
right, okay, I haven't written a school teacher before. Let's do that one because I have a cousin who is, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, what would you say would be one of the biggest challenges of getting this story out to the world?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I think one of the many challenges is the faith aspect. Every reader is different. Some like overt faith, some want a little bit less. And so there's always that question of, is it too much? Is it not enough? Trying to play the balance. And then I think at the end, I usually answer it with, well, what is it for the characters? Is it too much for them? Too little? And then I let the characters dictate the amount of faith and then remind myself over and over, the characters did that.
Yes, it's their
Don't
fault.
exactly.
But that's a great dynamic to actually think about because you and I've had this conversation with other authors where the faith element has to be organic to the story. And sometimes that calls for overt faith elements. And sometimes they're so subtle that unless you're looking for them, you won't find them.
Right.
And I think that different readers have different preferences, just like all of us have different preferences. I mean,
Yeah.
ask somebody about music at church and you get the preferences, right?
Yep.
But I really think it's so important coming from an author perspective to go is what are the conversations these characters would have that are natural. And I think too, I don't know what you would say about this. I think that some stories lend themselves more to being more overt, and some just naturally lend themselves, not even just the characters, but the story itself lends itself to a more subtle approach.
Yeah, and I like that you can find everything between subtle and overt because we're all on different paths in our journey. And not only that, but just on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you want something more overt, and sometimes you just want to be entertained and not have deep theological discussions while reading your book.
Or read about somebody else's deep theological discussion.
Exactly.
But and I also, I mean, along the same lines, I mean, we're all at different places each day emotionally to be ready for something. There's also the aspect that God uses different things different ways,
Yep.
and that's the beauty of Christians who are writing fiction. Because if our goal is to glorify Him, however it comes across in the story, if that's our goal, right?
Right.
Then He's going to use that in the way He wants to for the people He wants it to meet, and that's so encouraging for us, as authors. That's not ours to carry. Um,
Yes.
and so I really like that, thinking about it that way, to say, okay, I'm writing what I think will glorify Him, what I hope will glorify Him, and He can do all the hard work because it's the heavy lifting that I can't do.
Right. You just do your body part, quote unquote.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Which body part would you want to be? I think, I don't know, an ear, a finger. I don't know.
I feel like if we got to choose, we'd always pick the wrong one, right?
Yes, we would, exactly. It was up to us. It's so true. Okay, so I definitely want you to talk about this being a series, but I want to, before we talk about book 2 and book 3 in the wings, um, I would like to hear about who are some of the secondary characters you really enjoyed. You have some great secondary characters in your book, and they usually end up having their own story. But there are a couple in this book, or actually one in particular, who won't have her own story, but she was a fantastic secondary character. I'd like to hear some of the secondary characters you really enjoyed.
I really enjoyed Miss Rosie and Miss Hazelton. They were great for wisdom. Also, I think Miss Hazelton was a little also great for a little humor here and there. And then there was Nora. I feel like she gets her own special category.
Yes,
Normally, I write a good roommate, good, friend,
yes.
and in Nora, we don't get that. We get the complete opposite. And poor Nevaeh um ends up being isolated, I think, because of it.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have that friendship like you would normally see. And well, she kind of does in Miss Hazelton. And you get to see that older mentor slash friendship, but she doesn't have like the peer relationship because Nora is just not a good person.
Well, and I also think that plays really well into when you have the series you did before this one, with the three ladies, the three young ladies. One was like
The pop singer and the
yeah, those three.
uh,
There's this difference between having these positive influences, peer influences in your life, and how they keep you Christian wise, faith wise. You're watching that support and bouncing ideas off of each other and that sort of thing.
right,
And Nevaeh didn't have that, so it made a lot of sense why she was making choices that sometimes spiritually you would go, wait a second, why are you making that choice? But she didn't have that fellowship, that group,
right,
to say, listen, you need to get your act together. This isn't the right choice. Not that she was making really bad choices, but she was coming to conclusions on things sometimes, like the church, going to church, physically
right,
going to church. Whereas a Christian friend might have said, "Can we talk through this first about what you think?" And the hero ends up being that person, right? Which is
right,
awesome, right? But it in your other stories, like those stories, you have these positive peer influences who are helping do that brainstorming, and it's a very important thing to remember for us as non-imaginary friends to what influences we have in our lives that are helping us move closer to Christ in the process of life, you know?
Right. And it's so important of who you surround yourself with. So, even though Nora is a bad person and Nevaeh, spoiler alert, ends up cutting that relationship off, it's a good thing. Like that needed to happen so that she can bring the good people who are going to uplift her and point her towards Jesus. Um, and I think sometimes like we need to have that same reflection, like who's in our lives? Do I really need this relationship? Are you holding it on because, you've been friends since, childhood? Or are they really a good person and you need to keep them there? Like it matters.
It does matter, and it's great to kind of see that dynamic, whereas you don't usually have those in your stories, and it was neat to get to see how differently that changes how Nevaeh responds in her world. And I also think, though, it also shows her strength of character because she does make choices away from that, and that's a hard decision to make, is to choose to break those kinds of long-term relationships you have with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we hinted at a book 2 and book 3.
Yes.
So I know you have book 2 ready and coming out in 2024. Let's hear a little bit about that, and then you can give us a few teasers about book 3.
Okay, I'd be happy to. So, book 2, A Run at Love, comes out May 7th, 2024, which is so great because it's all about the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby is on May 4th, so the book comes out a few days afterwards. So I know I'm going to have fun ramping that.
And hat.
For,
You've got to get you a hat.
I know. I'm planning on it. Trust me, I will have a hat.
Yes, I'll celebrate with you that way.
Yes, that would be great. And it's going to be Tuck and Piper's story. And you meet them both in the love script. Tuck is a horse trainer, and Piper owns a horse that she wants to get to the Kentucky Derby. And then the third block is about the third friend. Tuck and Chris are both Lamont's friends, which you meet in the love script. So the third block, which releases in 2025, is Chris's story. He is a wildlife conservationist who also is a YouTuber star. So that's his spotlight because everyone's going to be in the spotlight. And so yes, I can't wait for you to meet Chris. I was actually thinking about his story this morning because I'm in the research stage, making sure like I know my characters, their backstory, and he told me some really interesting things. So wait until you find out.
Now, one of the things that's interesting about Tuck's story, Tuck, right, is your
Yep.
hero too, is that you have this dynamic of her making more money than him. Isn't that right? Is that what you said?
Yes, I did say that. Which is always fun, I think, when things are flipped, because
Yep.
how do people respond to that? So there's some identity questions,
Especially if he's a guy.
exactly, value, their worth, like all of that comes into
Mm-hmm.
question, in their story. And they're best friends, so there's that, the whole friends to more trope.
My favorite trope. I love that trope so much. Do you have a favorite trope, or one of your favorite tropes?
I do. So fake dating is one of my favorites, which the love script is, but I actually really love a good marriage of convenience, especially in contemporary. Ah, I'm all over it.
I've got to figure out how to do that because I have an idea for one, but I've got to figure out how to make it believable.
It's possible. Do it.
Possible.
I will read it.
I'll keep that in mind. If I ever get to write it, I will keep that in mind. That'd be great. Okay, so upcoming, you've got quite a few things on the upcoming list of books. Would you mind sharing a little bit what readers can look forward to?
Yes. So actually in 15 days, I have a Christmas novella releasing. You make it feel like Christmas. I love the cover. It's so, I mean, Christmassy. I don't know if that's a true word, but it fits.
I've written it in books before and not been edited for it. So
See,
hey.
there you go. It's very Christmassy. It gives you all the feels. And since it's hot, we need all those wintry vibes going on.
Yep.
And
Very much.
then, yeah, that's
And then Tuck Story, which comes out in May, like you said,
yes.
2024. So we have those two to look forward to coming from Toni Shiloh. Yay. Let's see. Last question. What book do you have a book in you that you're hoping you can get to write someday, or one that is in the future that you can't wait to write?
I do have a book in me that I want to get to write.
Only give a little teaser, so you don't have to give a lot, but little.
Okay. Football.
It's about football. That would be fun. And you have a love. Your family has a love of football, right?
Oh yes. Yes. I might be a little of a fanatic.
Yeah, all the more reason why you've already got the research down.
Right? Finally, one I don't have to exhaust my brain with.
Really? Yep. I've got one coming up where I'm going to have to do that. And I'm like, okay, it's good research, but it's still like, here we go.
Buy chocolates, fuel
Yes.
your brain.
Watch a lot of videos while eating the chocolate.
Exactly.
And count that as research. Yes.
Yeah. Does chocolate become a tax write-off if you're using it for writing? I don't know.
It's medicinal purposes as a writer. I'm thinking this should be a thing.
Sounds great. Might as well add coffee and tea to it.
Exactly. I mean, I could do a lot of tax write-offs if that was the case. Thank you so much, Toni, for spending time with me today. And for those of you who don't know, this is our second attempt. The first time we did a video, I didn't have internet at my house because of lightning strike. And so Toni videoed it and sent it back to me. And the whole time I'm like this. So I was like, Toni, we're going to do that again. Unless people want to think I'm R2D2 or C3PO. So I'm so glad she was willing to come back and do a second take. But like Toni said, her book, The Love Script, just came out August 1, so it's available now for purchase. Fantastic story, great characters, and in 15 days, her Christmas novel's coming out, which, again, as a cover, I just love it. It's like one of those covers you just stare at and go, I feel Christmas right now. Yes, don't you? And so keep that in the back of your mind. You guys remember, if you do read her stories, please reach out and leave a review. They do matter to us. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be in depth. It can be 2 sentences and that's it. But those do matter, and we are really appreciative of them. So, anything else you want to add?
No.
Where can we find you? Where can readers find you?
Yes, you can find me at tonishiloh.com. It has my newsletters subscribe page. It has a contact page if you want to write me an email, and it has all my social media links so you can follow me wherever you wish to follow me at.
Follow her wherever you go, all the way to football. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.